Welcome to the Aligned Birth Podcast. This podcast is devoted to talking about all things prenatal, pregnancy, postpartum, transitioning into motherhood. You've got two hosts of the show. I'm one of them. Dr. Shannon and Doula Rachael is here as well. So you have both hosts. So we're going to talk about a mental birth cave and where to go in your brain when things get tough, and talk about the pain cave. And we're going to talk about fear and doubt in pregnancy and going into labor and birth. And then we're going to talk about the treasure box and another way to think of it, how you can access this treasure deep within you to push past things that you think that you can't. The Pathways to Family Wellness article. It's an article called The Treasure Box. And now we're just going to elaborate on this and share some of our thoughts and feelings. Welcome to the Aligned Birth Podcast. I'm Dr. Shannon, a prenatal chiropractor.
And I'm Rachael, a birth doula and childbirth educator. Together, we're here to bring you conversations about pregnancy, birth, and motherhood. From cesarean to VBAC, hospital to home births, we've experienced it all. We are high school friends who reconnected through our shared passion for health and birth. As moms to two young boys, we've both changed careers after our own transformative childbirth experiences.
Join us as we discuss the importance of a healthy body and mind throughout pregnancy, birth, and into motherhood. Our goal is to provide fun, interesting, and helpful conversations and interviews that inspire learning. When your body, mind, and intuition are aligned, you can conquer anything.
Sit back and relax, or grab a notebook and take some notes, or maybe listen as you enjoy a walk. However you choose to listen, we hope you enjoy this episode of the Aligned Birth Podcast. Before we get into the episode today, if you enjoy the content of this podcast, we would greatly appreciate your support in one of three ways. First, leave us a review or give us a 5-star rating. Your feedback helps us reach more listeners and make a bigger impact. Second, you can sign up for our newsletter. By doing so, you'll be the first to receive new episodes and exclusive bonus resources straight to your inbox each week. Lastly, you can become a direct listener supporter. Running this podcast requires significant time, effort, and resources. Your contribution, no matter the amount, helps us continue providing valuable content to a wider audience. Simply use the links in the show notes to make your donation, sign up for our newsletter, or leave us a review. Every contribution matters and is sincerely appreciated. If the Aligned Birth Podcast is a part of your weekly routine and you love what we are doing, please consider supporting us through one of these three options. Your support will create a ripple effect, allowing us to reach more listeners and make a lasting difference.
Hey.
Hi, Dr. Shannon. It's okay. It is when it's ebbing, when it ebbs and flows and is organically changing in front of you as we are recording. You do what you do, and it's fine.
Yeah, this is our third episode that we've recorded today because we do them in batches, and it's just funny how the episodes we've recorded, they've all been about similar topics. Sometimes that doesn't happen, but
there's been like
really
some threads.
Yeah, there's been threads. And so I'm glad that we saved this one for last because I think it's really good. So again, this one is very loosely based where the idea came from a Pathways to Family Wellness article. So that's a chiropractic based magazine published by the International Chiropractic Pediatric Association, ICPA. They are an organization that hosts perinatal and pediatric chiropractic training. So they have certification programs, diplomate programs. We've had several chiropractors on who teach the courses. This is where Webster technique comes from as far as that prenatal chiropractic care training and certification classes. We've had Dr. Pam on, Dr. Martin Rosen, Dr. Danielle Drobin. They're all associated with ICPA. So it's a wonderful organization. They put out a quarterly magazine, and it's one of my favorite magazines. In fact, this magazine, I think, played a huge role in me becoming a chiropractor because my chiropractor, Dr. Pamela Stone, gave me the magazine, and I read one article in there, and it shifted my mindset, and it it just wanted, I wanted to search out more. And it was about a book that was written called Molecules of Emotion. And then I read that book, and then I quit my job and went back to school. So this magazine has the potential to change your life. No. But I just really love this magazine. I love the articles that are in it. I love to hand it out to moms. But Rachel and I like to sit down every once in a while and go through and discuss some of the articles because they're so good. So we've done this before. I don't even remember the ones that we've talked about. Childbirth education, prenatal chiropractic care and childbirth education, hospital-based classes versus independent childbirth classes, like lots of good articles. But this one today is called The Treasure Box. So do you want to tell us a little bit about what the treasure box is?
Well, I like this article about the way it described this place that you access or go in labor as the treasure box. I feel like it's a really poignant and beautiful way to describe it. But I will back up a little bit to this article has been on our list for a while. So a couple years ago for your vision board event, which I love. I still have the board from like 2 years ago because I love it so much. I've left it up. And in the center is the cutout from this article. It's like a silhouette of a pregnant person, and it's like a gold orange color. And that article really resonated with me. So did the image. I'm a big fan of Pathways magazine as well. Almost always devour every article of every issue. It's content. It's not like advertising. It's like actual it's content, full. Like helpful information. It's like reading a book. I love it. But then it's like a whole bunch of different perspectives on a lot of different topics. And we tend to extract the ones that are more birthy or chiropractic related. But they have all kinds of topics. But so when you brought this back up as something for us to talk about, I was like, oh yes.
Because I remember in our little Excel file, we have a little Excel file that will, if we're searching for topics or something to come up with, we can revert back to it and see what have we talked about or whatever. And it's a wealth of knowledge.
Or when things really, pique our interest, we put it in there so we can draw on it later.
We need to pick a Pathways article. Which one should we do? And I was looking, I was like, we'll do Treasure Box. Yeah. Rachel put this one there, and she put it in there forever ago. So I could tell you're like,
it's just waiting on its own time to come through. So I think this is an interesting one because it's something as like a first time birther. I try to put myself back in those shoes. And I think this would have felt very hard to access and hard to like lean into, not having given birth, but now having given birth twice. I'm like, yes, this makes sense. And working with lots of mamas and partners and families going through the birthing process, like this is a very real thing that I work really hard to help people understand. So it's this very ambiguous thing that we're kind of like struggling to say what it is, but it's like, it's really overcoming the fear and doubt that is like ingrained in us through our society and culture about birth. For the majority of us, I feel like we're more fearful of birth until we learn about it, until we've witnessed it or experienced it, or until we truly understand it a little bit better. The default is fear, which is normal. Like to fear birth, to fear things you haven't gone through before, especially fear things that are, are inherently risky, that are going to change your life forever, that are something you've really wanted for a long time.
Right?
Yeah, it's going to be painful. Like if someone was like, here, do you want to do this experience? You'd be like, yeah, but that makes me really nervous or fearful. Like, so fear is normal, but like, what are we going to do with that fear and doubt? Are we going to stay fearful? We're going to continue to feed it with fearful things that make us feel more fearful, or are we going to counter it with things that help us feel less fear? And this is what, as a doula, when people hire a doula, I feel like a bulk of what we do with them is in pregnancy, and it's addressing how they learned about birth, perceptions of birth, overcoming fear, overcoming doubt, trying to help them see the potential of what can exist in the process of pregnancy and birth, for what you can access to grow a baby, to go through pregnancy in a way that feels good, in a way that is honoring your body and honoring the process, and leaning into the discomfort and leaning into the fear. So like there's so much potential like that I feel like we can gain from the process of pregnancy and how we approach that, as well as birth. And I think all those things that we gain from those processes last forever.
This is
Like
why birth is so transformative. And it's the ripple effect, what we've talked about too. Because it's not just, yes, bringing forth life, but this literally, your cells change, but it literally changes your brain. It changes your brain. It changes things about you. It's so transformative.
There's a spectrum of like potential, like of what birth can do for you. And I think when you kind of are more open to the massive potential, the easier it is to access. But even for those who have done the education, got the support team, really worked on the mindset, once you're in labor and going through the process, it's still really hard.
You still have to do it. You can have everybody around you and have the support. You still have to do it.
And then once you start feeling the sensations, and maybe it's gone on for a while or whatever, like whatever has happened or is happening for you, even if it's normal and there's no like negative things happening, it's still a really hard event. And so when you're in it, that's when the doubt might come back and the fear might come back. And that's what this article, and it was a really short article. It was an expert from a
midwife.
Yeah, it was a midwife basically kind of giving, it's like she told a story, but it's like it could have probably happened 100 times over. You know, she probably does this a lot. And it's where you feel the uncertainty and the doubt in labor. And then the midwife is telling you, you can do it. Like you can get through this. Like you just got to go to a place.
You got to go to a place.
To the treasure box.
Inside you.
To the pain cave.
Well, to the pain cave. We're going to talk about that in a minute. So the one, it starts off with quotes from her client. And I resonate very deeply with this because the client says, I have serious doubts that I can do this being giving birth. When things get tough in my life, my habit is to change my mind and walk out. Well, I won't be able to do that in the middle of the birth now, will I? She laughs nervously, like, there goes my escape plan. That's the crux of what this is. It's, you're going to have to do this hard thing. You can't escape it, right? So how do you dig deep? How do you dig and find those reserves within you?
And one of the other quotes that also resonated with me would be like, the answer to that is that one of the gifts of labor is that we have to do it. You don't get to walk out. You don't get to quit. You've signed up for this. You want this. And we get to see what we really are capable of through this process. And that is a treasure. That's the treasure box that you will take with you the rest of your life. Exactly. And that is like, when you can believe in that and be open to that in labor and understand, like when you can kind of view it as this bigger picture with greater ripple effects, you got so much potential there that that's what I always want to just like help people access, help people see the potential. And sometimes you do, and sometimes you don't. You can't help everyone see it, but a lot of women go through this.
That fear and that doubt. I know in one of the other episodes that we had just recorded, we talked a little bit about, you mentioned you talk with clients and try to find out what hard things they've done in their life. Like, maybe you've put in work and put in training for something. A lot of times it's very easy to go to that physical aspect of things. Like, did you train for something that was really difficult, that took a lot of time and intensity and energy, that you were nervous about, you hadn't done it before, didn't know if you could do it, like all of those type of things. You use that with your clients to then say, okay, how did you do it? Where did you go mentally? Because it's setting up our external environment to help us feel safe and comfortable with birth. And yes, it's going through the external environment of childbirth education classes and creating that birth support team, those things that are all kind of external to you. But there is some internal work that you can do beforehand maybe as well. I don't know. It's hard. Maybe you can't do it beforehand, but maybe what it is you look back in time and you say, okay, this is when I did a hard thing. How did I get through that? How did I do that? And I don't know. I know for me, I never thought of birth as something to train for when I was pregnant or some I know as a physical event, but and I'm a runner. And so I guess looking back, I'm like, I don't think I ever equated any of where do I go in my brain when I'm running a marathon? Where do I go when I'm training and it's really hard and you got to get that grit, that mental grit? Like, where do I go? And I'm like, man, I kind of wish I had thought about that with birth. I think that would have been really cool to try to access it because you know what, another thing I think that helps you be an active participant in it. It's not something that's happening to you anymore. It's like, okay, no, I am intentionally going to this place in my brain. I am intentionally focusing on what needs to be focused on. I'm a part of this. Maybe I guess I'm kind of, I don't know, hashing out things in my brain now, kind of going back, but I never looked at it as that. And that would have been cool to look at those births as those things. Where did I go in my brain? That would have been fun.
Yeah. No, we do a lot of deep diving with our clients, birth doula clients before labor, with an effort to learn about how they learned about birth, how they perceive birth, and then we adjust accordingly, like kind of how we're going to help them learn about how they can best prepare for birth, right? If they had a lot of really positive stories about it coming up and they've done some work around it, you kind of know there's some, you kind of work on different things, but if they have a lot of fear around it or, had some trauma or anything like that, or have heard about trauma stories or, we adjust and we address those things. So we really try and help our clients think about things that they hadn't thought about as being impactful on their birth. So it can be, again, how they learned about birth, their own birth story, stories they've heard from friends or witnessed, any sort of education or videos or movies they've seen. A lot of people they'll be like, oh, I've only ever seen it in the movies. And we're like, okay, well, let's talk about that. Like, how does that make you feel? What does that mean? And how can we normalize birth for you? So we do spend a lot of time getting to know our clients and how they are where they are and engaging their fear around birth. Right? Like if they have a lot of fear around birth, then we know we got a lot of work to do, because really it's about pulling down that veil and peeling back the layers and really reducing fear around birth. Like birth
what is it? What's the specific thing? Is it the fear of pain? Is it fear of losing control? Is it, and it's different for everybody.
Yeah. And so that's usually very helpful for our clients. And then we go further with it. If we feel like we try and kind of extract those events in their life that we can draw the parallel on. And if it's fitness or training for a big physical event, that's usually the easiest.
Right.
We had a client recently who was a big CrossFitter, big athlete, and we had a really wonderful conversation with her. And we were able to say, okay, when it's a grueling workout and you're having to push past the point of comfort and you're really experiencing a lot of pain, which, side note, we do a lot of things in our life that cause pain and discomfort, and we're supported and celebrated in those things, such as long runs, marathons, obstacle course runs, CrossFit competitions, like ultra marathons. I can't even think of all the big triathlons. There's all kinds of things that push people to their absolute limit.
Yeah.
And
crawling to the finish line.
Train for months leading up to. They eat a specific diet. They probably have to learn. I'm intimidated to do a triathlon because I have to learn all the logistics of a triathlon, right? You got to have a team. You got to have people along the way, supporting you, carrying your stuff. We celebrate that. But for birth, when we try and draw that parallel, you need all the same things. And you're also preparing for a pretty intense, painful, and pain or not, you can call it whatever you want. It's an intense event.
Yes.
With some risk, right? So we do things voluntarily that put us in discomfort, that we have to prepare for and have knowledge about. Birth is the same way. I'm trying to like draw that parallel. Tattooing is another thing. People tattoo their bodies, put themselves in pain for hours, and that's like normal.
And they can show it off. Yeah. And they're like, oh, look at
people are like, cool. Yes. You do an unmedicated birth. People are like, are you crazy?
I know. What is that? Why wouldn't you just avoid the pain?
Yeah, it's like, well, no, I wanted this. I signed up for it. And so supporting people along that way. But I digress.
I know. Where are we going with this? I don't know.
But the CrossFit, like workouts, like the grueling, like a million burpees, you're running miles, you're doing up, down. Like there's a whole bunch of stuff, right? You're putting yourself in a significant amount of discomfort. We asked her though, we're like, where do you go? Where do you go when you don't want to go anymore? And she described it. She was like, I go to a dark place. And that wasn't like a negative dark place. It was just like almost like you got to tune out at the same time as tuning in. Like you're going to continue doing the things. And you just got to get through that like next set of reps and then you take a break. And you know there's an end in sight. Like you know it's coming. And so I love the way she described that. And that was very recently. And then you had a friend who described like she was like running a 100-mile race or something. And
I wish she was a friend. She's very famous.
Very famous. Oh,
Courtney
you were just
Walter,
sharing her story. No, it was an interview of her on Instagram. And she talked about accessing the pain cave.
The pain cave.
To be able to run, was it a 100-mile race?
Call it what you want. Oh, yeah. She's one of the most amazing women, just ran UTMB. She won 3 of the Western states, everything. So, but she goes to the pain cave, you know? She smiles, she's having fun while she's running, but she says it's a mental device she uses to persevere through grueling days and nights, covering hundreds of miles of rough terrain to eventually and often come out a winner. Because she usually does. She always wins.
So like she's trained for that. She's prepared. She knows like she knows that the reward is worth the effort and worth the pain. And she's chosen to do this. And if birth is not the exact same, I don't know what is. Like you've chosen to do this, like you're giving birth, maybe unmedicated, or even if medicated, like there's still a place you have to go in order to finish the task. And so that I just think that parallel is so cool because I think when we're talking, and I grew up playing sports. I've trained for some races. Like this is easy for me to access, so it's easy for me to talk about. I get it. Not everyone and you're a runner. Like you've ran for a long time. You run long distance. Like you can access this thought process as well. So I fully understand if you're listening and you're like, nope, not me. Have no idea what you're talking about. I get it. But that's where we would encourage you to explore what in your life has been challenging that you've had to get through, right? And I think everyone has something they can draw on. So encouraging you to think about what hard things have I overcome and how did I overcome them? And try to
did you use? Yeah, and try to extrapolate,
visualize like
tools.
What you did to get through it, and then know that birth has the potential, like it's a gift if you can see it that way. If you can see the reward on the other side as worth it, as worth the time and worth the like energy you poured into it and worth the intensity and the discomfort that comes with it. Like if you can see it as worth it, then you can get through it. But it's like sometimes we get so hung up on the unknown and the fear and the doubt that we can't see that A, this is something we wanted, and B, like there's the reward on the other side is great. And I think the reward is even greater when you can approach it in a meaningful way, when you can go through pregnancy, like learning about yourself and exploring your options and advocating for yourself and kind of working out some of these exercises and tools of advocacy and decision-making and education and support team and a lot of things that we talk about, especially when you can really lean in, then the reward I feel like is even potentially better or greater on the other side. I don't know. I just think if you can see it, and I think when you're talking about the woman who ran 100 miles, like willing to go to that dark place in order to get to the other side and that's worth it. I don't know.
Testing her
circling
limits.
Around the drain on it this a little bit, but just trying to like help people see the potential.
The correlations there, the parallels there. And it's not that you need to see birth as, I mean, it is an extreme physical event. So you want to put in the training for it. And you were kind of saying the same thing with the triathlon. I have a patient, he runs 100-mile races. He just did a 100-mile race. He just won a 100-mile race.
Wow.
And it puts in lots of time and effort. And he has this team with him too. So I think there's so much in this article. And when you're talking about the pain cave or the mental birth cave or the treasure box, and I don't know, my brain's going a million miles a minute. So I'm trying to like piece all the things together, but there's different ways to access it. Maybe you don't want to look at it as the pain cave, because in this article, it talks about when the midwife says that there's a sign that you're almost there with birth, when you're feeling like you literally can't go on one more minute. She goes, it's a sign that you're almost there. And it is then when you feel you have nothing left to draw from that you were given the key to open your treasure box. Mm-hmm. So maybe for you, that's a better way to look at it. Like if I don't know why athletes, sometimes we'd say it is like a dark place or it's the pain cave. I don't know where I go. I go one foot in front of the other. I don't know. I don't know where I go in extreme stuff. So it seems like maybe that athlete mind correlates it to something there, but wanting to give people another aspect of, it doesn't have to be like that. You could use the word treasure box. You could use that gift, that you get to open and access and see of yourself.
At the point you feel like you can't go any further, recognizing that as a gift, like of saying this, you're almost there. Like you're almost at the end. This, when you start saying and feeling like I can't go on in labor, it's usually a sign that you're really close to the end. And I think giving that language around it, calling it a treasure box, is like, okay, you're there, open it, go into it, like receive that.
Yes,
and
receive the gift.
Receive it. And I just think you got to visualize yourself being able to kind of go leave this plane a little bit, like leave this earth in a way, obviously not literally, but like only could I try to talk about it if I hadn't gone through it. I don't know. But like, I feel like it was an otherworldly event, right? Where I was like frozen in time, where I didn't think I could do it, but was doing it, and was like, not really, like I had feelings of like thinking I couldn't do it, but also like, it wasn't like I was not going to do it. Like I was doing it. And I think the place I went to was like not thinking. So, that's where I feel like athletes in like the pain cave or the dark place is sort of like the not thinking, like almost like tuning out. And I think that's important to talk about too, because if people think, oh, they've got to be visualizing or meditating or breathing or doing something specific, sometimes it's just saying or doing, like just letting your brain go off. And I think maybe that's what you're talking about when you're running. You're like, I don't go to a place, but you're also not, you're probably, it's like, you're tuning out. You're just like, just going to keep one foot in front of the other. And same thing with contractions and birth.
For me, it's that, it's like hearing that breath and connecting with it again. Yeah.
And you find your thing like that you can hang on to, but it's, a book I want to tag in our notes is called Transformed by Birth. And it's a really long book. I did it on audiobook, but it is like all of this. And she gives it all the words and all the evidence of like how birth can be so transformative. And I just think this is just the tip of the iceberg. I love the conversation. I always kind of want to talk more about it, but I just kind of think this is all about planting the seed and encouraging others to explore the potential, find the parallels in their life, try to address the key thing with the fear.
Is if you do have that fear and that doubt going into birth, finding those parallels of when you did something really hard and what did you tap in there? Because maybe then that opens you up to looking and searching for other things. And I think one part of this too is I think your birth support team can play a huge role in helping that as well, and using the pieces, parts that you gather from them as far as helping to access that mental space that you need to go to. It helps you access it by I don't know, providing information, and because that information can help alleviate that fear. I don't know other
I
ways.
think we can access it better and more easily when we are supported, when we feel safe, when we trust our provider, and we're given time in labor, time and space to cope in the way we need to cope. So I think there are some factors there that support, and this is where I think sometimes interferes with this process and keeps us more in our thinking brain than our primitive brain. And so it's harder to access. So when you kind of realize, like, again, someone might hear us and be like, yes, I will go there. Yes, I got it. But then you get there and you don't realize all the factors that are sort of at play and how it makes it harder to access. I think because I've had my first birth was unmedicated, but in the hospital. And while I met a lot of my desires, it left me feeling more in my thinking brain than in my primitive brain. Whereas with my home birth, I do feel like I was better able to go to, I'm okay with calling it pain cave or dark place, because I do think I like that. And maybe I access my treasure box, whatever. I felt like it was more accessible because there was less distraction. It was more quiet. I was just more determined on being inward, and it took a lot of intentional effort. But again, that second time experience gives you new insight. But I remember my midwife at my first birth honestly, she was wonderful, but she was very loud. She had a very loud, high pitched, high energy voice. And when the baby was born, she was hooting and hollering and look at that, you did it. She was so she was cheering me on, but she was
just going with your energy, but
it was really high, really high, and a high pitched voice. And then I think back, my home birth, which was very different, more quiet, really, really quiet, which is what I wanted. Anyways. But also, so understanding kind of what you're up against and kind of what it would take to access this in labor in a hospital setting.
Yes, because there's the physical aspect of your birth cave. And I think your birth support team plays a part in that. It's your birth location that plays a part in that. So that's going to be with your team. That could be, it's your OB, your provider, your midwife. It's going to be hopefully the doula support, the chiropractic care, the education that you do, all of those things. Then you've got the aspect of helping with the physical birth cave, and creating that would be the it's the physical things that you can do, things that you can have. But then there's a mental place that you need to go to as well, and to address as well. And maybe that's something that's not really talked a lot about, in the birthing community.
Yeah. And I think it should be. And I think, I think it's because it's not this black and white thing that you can teach somebody about a stage of labor or a comfort technique. But I think what we're doing
you will
here,
go to the pain cave, and in your pain cave,
right?
You will
it sounds scary too.
I know
a little bit, but I feel like what we're trying to talk here is just that openness to the idea and the potential, and that it looks differently for everyone. But I like it. And I think it might be hard because it looks different for everyone. It's hard to teach. It's hard to articulate exactly what that looks like. But I like how we've drawn the parallels here. And I like how talking about understanding that it's not easily accessible unless you kind of are open to it and you sort of set yourself up to go there. And then knowing that when it's really, really hard and you don't want to keep going, that you have to keep going. You don't have a choice. And so when you can see that as a gift, and that when you get to the other side, you will be elated with yourself for what you overcame, whether it be medicated, unmedicated, belly birth, whatever, you'll be like, I brought forth a human. And in order to do that, I had to dig deeper than I've ever dug in my entire life. That is a gift. And so when it's happening, if you have someone that can remind you of that, of what you're about to, you're stepping into the transformation, but it's hard to see when you're in it, and that's why I think this article is the midwife reminding the birthing person, this is what you're going through. You and many other women have gone through this. You can't stop. You don't have a choice, but you can do it. You're almost there. Like that reminder
Access
is important.
the treasure box. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Aww. No, I think that sums it up. I don't know. I think that sums it up beautifully, what we were trying to say and accomplish with our disjointed thoughts today.
Thanks for following along our disjointed, but hopefully meaningful. It means a lot to me.
Our conversation.
I like this conversation.
I know. This might be
and
one of my
I appreciate
favorites.
your perspective on it.
Yeah, most definitely. Thanks so much, friend.
Bye.
Thank you for joining us on the Aligned Birth Podcast. We hope you found our discussions informative, inspiring, and enjoyable. Remember, when your body, mind, and intuition are aligned, you have the power to overcome any challenge that comes your way. We appreciate your support and leaving a review or rating, signing up for our newsletter, or becoming a direct listener supporter. Your contribution helps us continue delivering valuable content and reaching more listeners like yourself. Stay connected with us through our newsletter to receive the latest episodes and bonuses straight to your inbox each week. You can also connect with us on Instagram at aligned_birth. All links can be found in the show notes. Together, we can make a difference in the lives of the birthing individuals and new moms. Thank you for being a part of our community. We look forward to sharing more empowering conversations on the Aligned Birth Podcast. Until next time.